It was a day like any other for Ricardo, a seasoned attorney with a reputation built on unwavering integrity and skill. As he meticulously prepared for a critical court hearing, his eyes caught something unusual on his desk, a weathered antique fountain pen that once belonged to his late father. It wasn't just a tool, it was a piece of history, a relic of countless legal battles fought and won. Compelled by a force he couldn't quite explain, Ricardo slipped the pen into his pocket, unaware that this seemingly small act would lead to a moment that would change everything. As Ricardo walked into the courtroom, the air was thick with tension, the kind that precedes a high-stakes battle. But amid the seriousness of the proceedings, something extraordinary happened. The judge's gaze locked onto the pen in Ricardo's hand, and for a moment, the stern, unyielding expression on his face gave way to something softer, something deeply personal. What followed was an unexpected revelation, one that would unravel decades of history and connect two lives in a way that neither Ricardo nor the judge could have ever anticipated. As the judge's eyes remained fixed on the pen in Ricardo's hand, the courtroom seemed to fade into the background. The judge, a man known for his stern demeanor and unyielding adherence to the law, appeared visibly shaken. His hands trembled slightly as he set aside his gavel and leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "That pen, where did you get it?" Ricardo, sensing the gravity of the moment, carefully explained that it had been passed down to him by his father, a man who had also dedicated his life to the legal profession. The judge's eyes softened with recognition, and he took a deep breath, preparing to share a story that had remained buried for decades. The courtroom, once filled with the murmurs of legal arguments, fell silent as the judge began to speak. He recounted a time many years ago when he was just a young, struggling lawyer, fresh out of law school and full of ambition, but burdened by self-doubt. During one of the most pivotal cases of his early career, he had been mentored by a brilliant and kind-hearted attorney who had taken him under his wing. This mentor, it turned out, was none other than Ricardo's father. The judge described how, in a moment of crisis, he had lost a pen just like the one Ricardo now held, a pen given to him by his own mentor as a symbol of trust and responsibility. The loss had been a devastating blow to his confidence, yet it was Ricardo's father who had stepped in to reassure him, offering not only guidance but also the very pen that Ricardo now carried. As the judge's story unfolded, it became clear that this pen represented far more than just a writing instrument. It was a symbol of wisdom passed from one generation to the next, a tangible link between past and present, mentor and mentee, father and son. Ricardo listened intently, realizing for the first time the profound impact his father had made on others and how his legacy continued to shape lives long after his passing. The judge's voice wavered with emotion as he expressed his deep gratitude for the guidance and compassion Ricardo's father had shown him all those years ago. The atmosphere in the courtroom had transformed from one of tense anticipation to one of shared humanity. The attorneys, jurors, and even the opposing counsel were captivated by the unfolding narrative. What began as a standard legal proceeding had turned into a poignant reminder of the connections that bind us, often in ways we do not fully understand until they are revealed. Ricardo could feel the weight of his father's legacy in his hands, now more meaningful than ever. He realized that his father's influence extended far beyond the family, touching lives in ways he had never imagined. Drawing strength from the story that had just been shared, Ricardo felt a renewed sense of purpose. The case he was there to argue seemed to take on new significance. It was no longer just about winning or losing. It was about honoring the values his father had instilled in him: integrity, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of justice. As he rose to present his arguments, Ricardo felt the presence of his father guiding him, the pen in his hand serving as a reminder of the legacy he was upholding. The judge, now visibly moved, looked at Ricardo with a newfound respect. "Your father was a great man," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "He believed in the power of justice and the importance of helping others, even when no one was watching. Today, you carry that same spirit with you. Whatever the outcome of this case, know that you have already honored your father's memory in the best way possible." The courtroom remained silent as Ricardo began his arguments, the echoes of the past giving strength to the present and setting the stage for a future where the values of justice, compassion, and integrity would continue to thrive. The courtroom was enveloped in a palpable sense of reverence as Ricardo began his opening statement. Every word he spoke was charged with the weight of the story that had just been revealed. As he laid out the facts of the case, his voice was steady, but there was an undeniable warmth and conviction that resonated with everyone present. The pen, now more than ever, felt like an extension of his father's hand, guiding him, infusing his words with the wisdom and integrity that had defined his father's life. As Ricardo presented his arguments, he found himself not merely advocating for his client, but also for the principles his father had lived by. He spoke of justice not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing force that demanded fairness, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The judge listened intently, his earlier emotions still evident in his eyes. The connection between Ricardo and the judge had created an unspoken bond, a mutual understanding that transcended the case at hand. In the midst of his argument, Ricardo paused and looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," he began, his voice tinged with emotion, "I realize now that this case is about more than the legal issues we've been debating. It's about the legacies we leave behind and the impact we have on others. My father once told me that the true measure of a lawyer is not in the cases he wins, but in the lives he touches. Today I stand before you not just as an advocate for my client, but as someone who is striving to live up to the example my father set." The courtroom was silent, every person hanging on Ricardo's words. The jurors, who had been impassive at the start of the trial, now leaned forward in their seats, their expressions softened by the depth of feeling in Ricardo's voice. Even the opposing counsel, who had been formidable and unyielding, seemed momentarily taken aback by the shift in tone. Ricardo's words had pierced the veneer of legal formality, reaching the humanity that lay beneath. As the hearing continued, it became clear that this was no ordinary trial. The facts of the case, once tangled and contentious, seemed to unravel with a newfound clarity. The arguments, previously mired in technicalities, now took on a moral dimension. Ricardo's passion was infectious, and it was as if the courtroom itself had become a place of reflection, where everyone was reminded of the true purpose of the law: to serve justice and to uplift the human spirit. When the time came for the judge to deliver his verdict, the room was charged with anticipation. The judge, who had started the day as a distant and authoritative figure, now seemed almost reluctant to end the proceedings. He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Ricardo's once more. "This court finds in favor of the plaintiff," he declared, his voice firm but gentle. "But more importantly, this court recognizes the profound lesson we have all learned today. Justice is not just a matter of law, it is a matter of the heart. And today, we have been reminded of the power of legacy and the enduring impact one life can have on another." As the gavel came down, signaling the end of the trial, Ricardo felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had won the case, but more than that, he had honored his father's memory in a way that went far beyond legal victory. As he gathered his things, the judge approached him, offering a handshake that conveyed more than words ever could. "Your father would be proud," the judge said quietly. "And so am I." Ricardo nodded, his heart full, knowing that this moment, this case, would stay with him for the rest of his life. As the verdict settled over the courtroom, a wave of emotion swept through Ricardo. The victory was not just legal, it was deeply personal, a testament to his father's legacy and the values he held dear. But just as Ricardo began to pack up his papers, the judge unexpectedly called him back to the bench. The room, which had started to disperse, fell silent again as the judge stood, his eyes reflecting a mix of solemnity and something else, an unspoken resolve. "Mr. Ramirez," the judge began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of a confession. "There's something I must share with you, something that this trial has brought back to the surface after many years." The judge reached into his robe and pulled out a small, worn leather case. Opening it, he revealed an old, ink-stained piece of parchment, its edges frayed from time. This, he continued, is a letter I received many years ago from your father. It was written at a time when I was lost, doubting my path in the legal world. Your father saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and he offered me this pen, your pen, as a symbol of the trust he placed in me. The courtroom, once a place of contention, now felt like a sacred space where a shared history was being laid bare. Ricardo's heart raced as he stared at the letter, recognizing his father's handwriting. The judge handed it to him, and as Ricardo unfolded the parchment, his eyes scanned the familiar, elegant script. The words were filled with encouragement, wisdom, and a quiet confidence that his father had always embodied. This pen, the letter read, is more than a tool. It is a symbol of the responsibility we bear as lawyers, to serve justice, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to never lose sight of our humanity. As Ricardo read the letter, the full weight of his father's legacy pressed upon him. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he fought to keep his composure. The judge continued, his voice now thick with emotion. Your father's belief in me shaped the course of my career. He was more than a mentor. He was a guiding light. And today, seeing that same pen in your hands, I realize how that light continues to shine through you. Ricardo was speechless, overwhelmed by the profound connection that had been revealed. The courtroom was no longer just a place of law. It had become a bridge between past and present, between two men whose lives were intertwined by a shared mission of justice. The judge's hand trembled slightly as he placed the pen back in Ricardo's hand, closing it around the cherished item. I see now, the judge said, his voice breaking, that your father's legacy lives on in you, Ricardo. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. For a moment, the two men stood there, united in a silent understanding. The courtroom around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the significance of the moment. Ricardo realized that this was more than just a conclusion to a case. It was a profound validation of everything his father had stood for, everything he had hoped to pass down to his son. The pen, once a simple heirloom, had become a powerful symbol of continuity, of the enduring impact one person can have on the lives of others. As the judge returned to his seat, the courtroom broke into soft applause. It was a rare and genuine acknowledgement, not just of the legal victory, but of the deeper human story that had unfolded before their eyes. Ricardo, still holding the pen, felt a surge of pride and gratitude. His father's legacy had not only been preserved, but it had also found new life, new meaning in the courtroom that day. And as he looked around at the faces of those who had witnessed the moment, he knew that the impact of his father's teachings would continue to ripple outwards, touching lives in ways he could never have imagined. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Ricardo remained in place, the weight of the day's events still settling in his heart. The pen in his hand now felt like more than just a connection to his father. It was a bridge to a past filled with integrity, compassion, and a relentless pursuit of justice. He looked at the judge, who had returned to his seat but was clearly still moved by the encounter. They exchanged a final, meaningful glance, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had both been on, guided by the same mentor, albeit in different times and ways. Stepping outside the courthouse, Ricardo was greeted by the warm afternoon sun, a stark contrast to the emotional storm he had just navigated. He paused at the top of the courthouse steps, looking out at the city below. The streets, bustling with life, seemed to symbolize the continuous march of time, where past and present intersected in unexpected ways. He thought about his father, not just as the man who raised him, but as a force for good who had touched countless lives, including that of the very judge who had presided over his case. Ricardo realized that he was now part of that legacy, responsible for carrying it forward. Ricardo's thoughts were interrupted by his client, who approached him with a look of deep gratitude. "Thank you, Ricardo," they said, their voice filled with emotion. "You didn't just win my case. You brought something deeper to light. I felt like I wasn't just a client, but part of something much bigger." Ricardo smiled warmly, the words resonating with the truth he had come to understand in that courtroom. "Justice isn't just about the law," he replied. "It's about the people it serves, the lives it touches. And today I was reminded of how interconnected we all are. As Ricardo walked away from the courthouse, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The day had begun as just another step in his career, but it had transformed into a profound affirmation of the values he held dear. He resolved to approach every future case with the same dedication, knowing that the true measure of his work wasn't just in the victories he achieved, but in the lives he could impact along the way. The pen in his pocket was a constant reminder of this mission, a symbol of the legacy he was now fully embracing. Back at his office, Ricardo carefully placed the pen in a special case on his desk, where it would remain as both a keepsake and a source of inspiration. The day's events had not only reinforced his commitment to his profession, but had also deepened his understanding of what it meant to be a part of something greater than himself. His father's legacy was not just a memory, it was a living force, guiding his hand as he wrote the next chapter of his own life. And with that knowledge, Ricardo felt ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring, knowing he was never truly alone in the pursuit of justice. If this story inspired you, imagine what else is waiting for you. Don't miss out. Hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and explore more powerful stories on our channel. Your next favorite video could be just a click away.